The following podcast may contain adult language and an abundance of salt. So get ready, nerds, because we're talking Guillermo Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. We're talking Guillermo Del Toro's anthology series, Cabinet of Curiosities, episode 2, which stars one of our friends of the podcast, David Hewlett. It's called The Graveyard Rats. I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic panel of nerds. Matt Vader's here. What's up, dude?
Dude,
this show's a trip, huh?
This show is a trip, and this show, if I didn't have any phobias before,
you definitely do
this
now.
Show, I most certainly do now after episode 2. So thank you, Guillermo and Vincenzo and David. I hate you all. So yes.
Jude is also here.
Hello.
This is right up your alley.
It really is.
I feel like you love this already.
We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Ooh, spooky mystery. And last but not least, Matt Kadish. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, so this week we have a Vincenzo Natali theme going on where we're taking a look at a bunch of Vincenzo Natali projects such as like Cube and Splice and stuff like that. And so we thought it'd be fun to kind of take a look at his contribution to this anthology series. And it's kind of funny because we've known about this show for like a while because, you know, we talked to my best friend David Hewlett about it all the time. And he kind of like filled us in. And when we were doing our Doctor Who stuff, like Hewlett was shooting this and he had his like handlebar mustache and stuff like that.
Yeah, the mutton chops.
Yeah,
I was like, those look dope, dude.
We're all like, David, tell us about the facial hair.
Like, what's going on with this?
No. I can't really talk about that.
Actually, the mutton chops were prosthetics, but the mustache was real. Yeah. So like we've known about this for a long time and we've been looking forward to it because like Hewlett would tell us like, oh yeah, I got like rats on me and like all this other stuff. And so one of the things is that I really respect Vincenzo Natali as a filmmaker and a storyteller. And he does a lot of like really kind of like fun, interesting thematic stuff in all of his movies. And so when I was watching this one, I was like, oh, like I was expecting Evil Dead, but I got something quite different in the end. So like I'm really excited to talk about it. Yeah,
I am too. For the record, I love what Netflix does when they do the anthology movies and TV shows and stuff like that. Like The Ballad of Buster Scruggs by the Coen brothers. I love that freaking anthology series. A lot of fun, crazy, quirky Western stories in that show. Also, Love, Death, and Robots is another one that I really love. Like that show's so much fun because they give these artists and these directors like a chance to kind of just do whatever the hell they want for a 35 to 40 minute segment. And it really kind of shines to me. Yeah. I love that originality and all this fun stuff. So this is just another one of those feathers in the cap for me.
I love the fact that Guillermo gets to introduce these episodes.
Oh yeah, it feels so much like Twilight Zone.
It's very Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just
even looks like Alfred Hitchcock.
It kind of does.
You know,
I love those bottle glasses though. It's amazing. It's awesome. But yeah, he opens up the little cabinet and he introduces each episode and he's like, oh, this episode has to do with this today.
And what's great is like he handpicked all the directors for this anthology and he basically just said, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so like each episode, because like I've watched a couple of them, each episode is very different from the others. Like you don't get like kind of like a cookie cutter anthology with this. It's you know different directors behind each one, different writers, and it's an interesting take on the horror genre.
I was very impressed with this. You know, even the stuff during this show that is a little predictable still scares the shit out of you.
Yeah.
You know, I still jumped out of my seat even when I could clearly tell what was going to happen in a couple of cases. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh,
I know exactly the scene you're talking about.
And, you know, any show that can do that, especially today when we're also just desensitized to so much of this stuff that's out there on television and stuff, I have mad respect for it. And I enjoyed this. I think we should get into it.
Yep. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and there's going to be heavy spoilers from this. So this show has just now come out. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend go checking it out. At least episode 2. That's the one we're going to be spoiling today. I don't know how many episodes there are total. I think it's like 6 to 8, I believe. I've watched 3 so far, and I'm loving each one of them. So I can't wait to talk about this one. But spoilers for episode 2, The Graveyard Rats. That's one we're going to be talking about with David Hewlett. And stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Hey, if you guys would like to support what we do here at the podcast, you can go to saltynerd.com/DC and download a mobile game called Dragon Champions on Apple or Android devices. It's a really fun, easy to play, collectible game where you get to collect your heroes, upgrade them, and have a ton of fun going on the warpath. And if you type in Salty in the promo code area, you get a little bit of a leg up on the competition. You get some extra coins, extra characters, some really cool stuff. Once you reach level 20, then you can join our Salty Nerd Podcast Guild that is ran by one of our patrons, JT. It's a great community. They're very active on our Discord server as well. So if you want to jump in there and get a heads up on new codes, when the raids are going to be taking place, all kinds of really fun stuff, head over to saltynerddiscord.com and join into the Dragon Champions server there. We have a ton of fun with those guys. And some of our patrons have actually surpassed Matt Vader over here in their skill level. And they are really taking this upon themselves to make a badass guild. So head over to saltynerd.com/DC, join the podcast guild. Don't forget that promo code SALTY. All right, let's get into this episode. Cabinet of Curiosities, Graveyard Rats by Vincenzo. And starring David Hewlett. Jude, take it away.
All right. We are introduced to the episode by Guillermo Del Toro, who tells us the soil is full of secrets and treasure. David Hewlett, graveyard steward / robber, relieves 2 grave robbers of their stolen goods, and when he turns over his stolen goods to pay off a debt, he learns the jewelry isn't worth as much as he thought. The debt collector gives him 1 week to make good on what he owes, and the man rants that the graveyard rats are stealing bodies from coffins before he can dig them up. Discuss.
All right.
Oh boy.
This episode was a fucking trip,
It
dude.
was a trip.
It was so crazy. So first of all, like, I have to get over the idea that we know David now. We've talked to him multiple times. He's a friend of the podcast.
Yeah.
We have him on all the time. And we're like, I know the guy.
Yeah, it's weird
And
watching him on TV.
It's
but
weird
cool.
watching him work. But
Yeah.
damn, does he freaking pull
He
out
owns
all
it.
the stops.
Owns it.
I've never seen him like so expressive in his face. Like when he's in trouble, and we just watched the scene real quick on the screen over here where he's talking to his debt collector and he's like freaking out. I was like, you don't understand. And the monologue that he goes on for like 3 minutes.
Oh, this man can monologue.
Dude, like remembering these like early 19th century, or I guess it would be 20th century because this takes place in 1920, 1900s. 1919 is what was on the gravestone when he was first in the opening scene. But like the vernacular that he uses, it was like, I couldn't keep up with him. I'm like, what is he saying? I had to think about what his words meant because they're of like a different era. And it was so fun to watch. And he just pulls out all the stops.
Yeah, this is his thing. He's in every single scene.
Yeah, it's his show.
It's
for
his
sure.
show. This is not Dr. Rodney McKay that everybody is used to seeing.
He's
him
a
play.
slumlord grave robber.
This takes him to like next level stuff for me, and I love it. I think I'm really want to see David in more
crazy kooky stuff like this.
Stuff like this.
What were you gonna say, Jude?
I was just going to say, I love his look throughout too. Cause you know, the 1920s is my personal aesthetic. I love it. And his sideburns in his like dapper coat and his like parted in the center hair, his glasses that he wears to bed. Oh, I loved looking at like all of the stonework in all of the buildings and stuff. It's just really vintage looking and cool. And it looks like you're there.
Yeah. The set design and the cinematography really sells the time period.
Everything's dark.
It's dark and dingy. And
it's very Victorian H.P. Lovecraft.
Yes.
Yeah, I dig it.
There's several things that I just don't like in the real world.
Okay.
Okay, and one of those things is corpses and morgues. And the other thing is fucking rats.
That's half this episode, bro.
I know. Okay. This is what I said. This thing, it hits every cringe creep nerve in my head.
In the first introduction to the rats, when he's like reaching in that grave and he gets bit and he pulls back his hand, you see this like gouge out of his hand.
I'm like, oh, rabies.
Oh, and then the rats all
Black plague.
the rats all
dead.
fucked up, and it's like
That's the one he shoots later.
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he blows
It's
away.
just there's this thing just. I felt like you guys picked this thing out
Specifically for you.
Specifically to screw with me.
Like we didn't do it with you, we did it to you.
Right. And I know you didn't, but it's like it hit a lot of weird stuff with me. You know, even from the very beginning when they open the coffin and the maggots are eating
Oh, and
out her
the eyes are
eyeballs.
gone and the
'Cause
nose.
Oh, and they're talking about how pretty she must have been.
Yeah, because that's the soft tissue stuff always goes first.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It was very, I think, accurate from what I can remember about how, the stuff decomposes.
Are you
and
going to
everything.
tell me a growing up in Oregon story right now?
No, not at all.
Maggots?
I dug up a grave once.
Yeah.
No, but that kind of stuff, in the morgue scene, but they're just like out there. It's like I didn't need to see.
Oh,
dead.
that dude was hung.
I didn't need to see no dead dick.
That guy's been
weird,
dead for weeks, and he
Yeah.
is still hung. Like,
Yeah.
good for him, man.
Good for him.
Good for him.
I did laugh a little bit at the beheaded one. That was kind of funny.
We're still looking for the head.
Yeah,
I was like, oh,
the
Jesus.
bathtub one,
Oh.
gross.
It was like soup. Whoa.
The funny thing is like when we reviewed Splice, we pointed out very, accurately, I think, that Vincenzo Natali is really good at making audiences feel uncomfortable with his stuff. And Alex, you weren't here for the Splice review, but
I was uncomfortable watching because I was listening to it. I was on Twitter Spaces and I was listening to that episode and I was like, "Oh, this movie sounds gross."
yeah,
It's a gross movie.
So Vincenzo is like the master of uncomfortable cinema, and I think he loves like just fucking with his audience.
Yeah.
And this episode definitely fucks with you. And but did you guys notice that the morgue assistant Dooley was the guy who got dissected in the very first scene of Q?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Immediately I recognized
What's his
him.
name? Julian.
It's Julian Richings.
Richings.
Yeah. I immediately recognized him. I was like, "Oh, I know that face."
But I think it's cool how these directors and filmmakers, they have their little cabal of friends and people that they try to like get it. It's like they all do it.
Everybody, because
so that's kind of cool.
it's a relationship that you have with somebody.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, I'm doing this project and I love working with you. Would you want to do it with me?
It's
And
like,
they're
when
let's
Matt
go.
makes a film, I better get something in the
Oh,
background.
if I don't get a phone call, I'm going to be upset. Like, I need a handsome, young, dapper man.
I thought we were all making fuck you, Meryl
Meryl
Streep
Streep.
together.
I have that in my head. I know exactly how I want it to turn out.
You got to put that on paper.
Me and Jude. It's going to be a 2-person show.
Shut up, Uncle Tony.
Anyway, there's a couple of things too. I want to shout out Vincenzo for this because there's a couple of really creative camera work in this episode that I immediately picked up on. One was right when he goes into the morgue and he knocks on the door and he's like banging on the door. The camera's like right in Hewlett's face and staring at him. But then once he goes inside and the two have a dialogue back and forth, there's a scene where the camera follows the mortician and Hewlett, every time he's not talking, he falls out of frame. And then the dialogue goes to the mortician. And then as the dialogue returns to Hewlett, the camera moves and Hewlett's back in the frame again. I just thought it was super creative.
I didn't even notice that.
I love that kind of stuff because the worst thing in the world is watching two people talk to each other with the camera just sitting still. And you're just like, oh, this is boring. It was such a creative way of like putting people in focus for when they're talking. Oh. And then the other scene too, real quick before I get to Vader, is when Hewlett's looking through the fishbowl and he's listening in on the lady who's like burying her rich husband, and he's like, "Yes, I can't wait to rob that grave." I was like, "This is fucking awesome!"
Those
And
gold
then he
teeth.
stalks her at the funeral so that
Yes.
he can eyeball
Yes,
all of the
I'm
things she's
going to
burying
take
her
a
husband with.
I'm going to take a personal interest in your husband's grave to make sure it's not molested.
I'm gonna use your words for that scene, dude. Do less.
I just remembered the other cringy thing. It just made me crawl out of my skin. The coffin cam.
Yes, coffin cam.
Coffin cam freaks me out. It's like.
Are you claustrophobic?
A little. Yeah, I don't like heights. I'm not super claustrophobic, but I just don't relish the whole idea of death. I don't want to die. And when I do, they're gonna cremate the shit out of me, and I'm not gonna worry about it because the idea of putting me in a box and slowly decomposing.
I'm cremation 100%.
over the time, it's just like no.
I feel like
that is
bury
not
me in the backyard, like and plant a tree on it.
See, I'm all for the coffin.
He
because
wants to be preserved.
Well, at some point, I figure I'm going to come back. So if I do, I want the option to take my body.
Yeah, we've discussed zombie apocalypses as you do when you're in a relationship, and he's like, "Don't kill me because what if it's awesome to me?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Like Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
At the end, he's
Yeah,
playing
being
video
a
games.
zombie might be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to die?
Anyway, so the story progresses, and we hear this line of dialogue from Hewlett's character where he's like, the freaking rats are robbing the graves before I can get to them, and it's crazy. They take the bodies, and the debt collector's like,
Get out of here.
Use lying. Get out of here. He's got that like real hardcore New York.
Like, you've used up all my patience
I'm
talking to you.
not patient anymore. Shut the fuck up, Tony. Like it was one of those guys. It's awesome. And he's you like as an audience member, you're almost like maybe he is lying.
Yeah.
But then it turns out to be real.
Oh,
and he's got this rich guy. He's got all these gold teeth, and he's got his medals, and he's got a sword from King whatever the fuck. And he goes there. And he's like,
it's a priceless sword.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna rob that grave the second the family leaves. Like as soon as it gets dark, I'm gonna go out there and take all that stuff. And he digs it up and he removes the hood from the coffin. The coffin. He's got used lying to me. It's a coffin. He removes the hood from the coffin, and the dude's already being dragged out by the rats, and he's freaking out. And that's when this.
Oh, and he starts army crawling through these rat tunnels.
This episode switches from like a weird Victorian steampunky kind of weird vibe to just like full on tunnel horror.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we're in for a ride.
And that's where I went, oh my God.
Do you guys remember when Hewlett was telling us about being fitted for tunnels?
Yeah, they're taking
like,
measurements. Like, how small can we get this hole that you have to crawl through? It was cool, which immediately, like, I'm thinking of like the production of this. I'm like, how do they get the camera? Because the camera's like right in his face. And as he's crawling, the camera's moving and there's shots that are happening underground. I'm like, I have no idea how they're doing this.
Also, one of the brilliant things about it as like a filmmaker is so like Hewlett, as he's like crawling through the tunnels, he has a flashlight with him. Mm-hmm. And so like the him having that flashlight justifies like the lighting in that super dark tunnel. And so like even though like you can tell like they're using other lights, just the fact that like they have this light source in the frame that he's like carrying with him like justifies, you know, the audience actually being able to see stuff as opposed to like a Game of Thrones thing where
he hangs on to that flashlight the whole episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a wacky cool like 1900s flashlight that has like a big box on it, and it's really, really cool. I love it. And
then at one point he's like tracking this body, and he's fleeing from like an ROUS, and then he falls into this pit of skeletons. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Well, but before we get there, I want to point out some stuff about Vincenzo Natali and the way he tells stories.
Sure.
But first, before I get to that, I want to point out that this entire episode takes place in Salem, Massachusetts at the turn of the century, 1900s.
Witches.
Yes.
Witches.
And I'm kind of disappointed that Hewlett didn't use a Boston accent, but, it is what it is. So this story is based off of a short story by the same name from an author named Henry Kuttner. And Henry Kuttner was like a pulp sci-fi and horror writer. And he was part of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu crew. Now, if you don't know what the Cthulhu mythos is, it's basically like the first instance of like a shared creative universe where H.P. Lovecraft created this character named Cthulhu, who was a great old one. And other buddies of his, like other writers, kind of like got together and they brainstormed and basically fleshed out this entire like pantheon of old gods that they would then take and work into their stories. And so it was kind of like the MCU before the MCU. It was like H.P. Lovecraft's like, cinematic universe type thing, but in book form. And Henry Kuttner was a part of that cabal of writers who basically, helped develop the Cthulhu mythos and used it in their stories. In fact, he wrote a entry in the Cthulhu mythos called the Salem Horror, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a bit. But basically, it was kind of interesting. Kuttner, so like I actually read the short story that this episode was based on. And basically, the story starts when he's digging up the grave and sees it being pulled in to the ground by the rats. And so he chases after the rats, and there is no like queen rat in the short story. It's just like the rats are about as big as cats. They're just like super sized rats.
That's a big rat still.
Like New York City rats.
Yeah, exactly. So he chases after this body, and as he's chasing after them, he kind of gets lost in the tunnels, and he runs into a zombie that's also under the ground. And basically it ends with him like, dropping the boulder on the zombie and crawling into another coffin that the rats had raided. And he's like suffocating because there's no oxygen. And then as he's suffocating, the rats come in and eat him. And that was like the end of the short story.
Essentially what happens in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, like basically from like the midpoint of this episode to the end is pretty much exactly the short story with one exception. So this was a pretty faithful adaptation. But one of the interesting things that Vincenzo does is like, you can watch a Vincenzo Natali film or episode of television and enjoy it for like its surface level stuff, because this is kind of like a fun horror, like almost Evil Dead type thing with like David Hewlett. And he's like, you know, he's terrible at fighting rats. He like shoots himself in the foot. He gets poked in the eye by a branch and stuff like that.
Oh, you know, just talking about Hewlett again, that scene where he gets poked in the eye with the branch and then he freaks out and he yanks the branch out. Been there.
Yeah.
That is so accurate.
Yeah.
You're so angry that like you made a mistake like that.
Stupid
freaking branch. You just like yank on it and it ends up making the situation worse. That was
I've
like
done that in my own backyard.
yeah, absolutely. That was like pitch perfect for as far as like human, you know, just being a person. It was awesome.
I just love how Vincenzo scratches all of these phobia itches in this show.
Yeah.
There's so many. And it's just, you just have to bear with it. You have to get through
grind your teeth and just go.
Man, it's hard. It is hard because
it is.
He goes so hard.
Can we talk about Queen Rat real quick?
Oh yeah,
because that thing was real.
You know, but the whole claustrophobia, rats, coffins, buried alive stuff. Those are real phobias, and I think I have all of them now.
so
worse than before.
Can I finish my?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sure. Go ahead.
So one of the interesting things about Vincenzo Natali films is like you can watch them multiple times and start seeing like the depth to which he goes in with like the themes and like different layers that he puts in here. And so like most people probably don't know who Henry Kuttner is. And so when you're watching this film, you tend to miss a lot of stuff that he layered in, because like you can tell Vincenzo studied Henry Kuttner's work and like figured out, like, you know, read into him and stuff like that. For instance, the woman that they're digging up in the opening scene on the tombstone, it says Catherine Lewis Paget. And basically the name Lewis Paget was a pseudonym that Henry Kuttner and his wife, Catherine Lucille Moore, used when they wrote books together, because like after they got
cool.
The camera kind of focused on the gravestone, and I immediately put a bead on it, and I was reading the name. I was trying to figure out if it meant anything, but I didn't put as much research into it as Kadish did. So I was like, oh, I thought it was like going to be something that came up in the episode later.
I just figured Matt would figure it out for us.
That's what he does. He's like, I read the short story, guys. It's fine.
Yeah. So Henry Kuttner, basically, once he got married to his wife, they started working together because she was actually a novelist and she would publish under like a man's pseudonym. And they met because he sent her a fan letter saying like he really liked her work, thinking that it was a dude. And when they started corresponding, he found out it was a woman. Romance started, and when they became married, they basically became like partners. And so they would write sci-fi, mostly sci-fi, but some sci-fi and horror stuff together. And she was actually like a huge creative influence on him. And so like I found it interesting that Vincenzo not only thought to include her in the opening scene of the movie, but basically Vincenzo was robbing her grave metaphorically at the start of this movie.
That's clever, dude. That's super clever.
Yeah,
I bet she was a looker.
So I found that like just peak Vincenzo, where like he just layers these little things in here. But the big thing is that because of Henry Kuttner's like relationship with H.P. Lovecraft and his contribution to the Cthulhu mythos, and he wrote the Salem Horror. If you look at this movie, they've set up very early on that there's like some Cthulhu mythos stuff going on in this episode itself, because David Hewlett sets up the idea of the Black Church and the witches that kind of worship the rats and stuff like that. And so there's stuff in here that you guys might not have noticed, especially at the end. And we're going to talk about that.
I definitely noticed when he was telling the story to the guy at the start about, I mean, he basically
he spells out the whole he foreshadows the whole episode.
Well, these black churches and the rats taking things.
But that's it's so
like,
freaking.
I kind of figured where this was gonna go. The journey there was just
fun.
It was fun.
Yeah,
and it was like freaky, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, but it gets deeper. Yeah, is what I'm saying.
What I loved about it. So we have to talk about the giant rat, because we know for a fact
the rodent of unusual size.
The rodent. I don't think they exist.
I don't think they exist. No.
Princess, we can't help ourselves, can we? So we talked to Hewlett about that already. He said there was a full-on robotic rat that this thing was like crawling around the tunnels with him. Can you Like when he was describing it to us, I was like, I don't know why, but I was not picturing
that thing's fucking teeth.
I was not picturing this. I was picturing some like rubber latex freaking rat running around.
No,
that thing is fucking scary.
It's terrifying.
Like I don't think he's acting at that point. When the thing comes up to his face and is like, rah!
He's like looking like to his left.
Oh yeah, no.
He's like, oh, shit.
It was the Alien 3 moment.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like looking that way, and then all of a sudden he's like, I think the closest.
Yeah. And that's that scene.
You know, when he comes on and reviews Toxic Avenger 4 with us or something stupid, sometime I just
love to do
I
this
know
with us.
I just want to talk to him about this because because you know that's what's going to happen. It's like, we're reviewing this week.
Yeah.
Some stupid movie. I'm in.
I have bones to pick with him about season 3 of C that he did not warn us for.
Oh my God. Anyway, yeah. Like, but just that freaking crazy robotic rat that he was acting against.
It's terrifying.
Terrifying. With the glazed over eyes.
Oh God.
The freaking giant teeth.
Because it lives underground.
I know, I get it. It's
and
like a naked mole rat.
What was really weird was when we first introduced it, they pan over to it. And here's this giant, like cow-sized, giant, half undead rat with its glazed over, and all these other rats
are feeding off of it,
sucking on its rat milk, nursing and stuff. And I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, it's a mother. And I'm like, oh fuck.
Well, it is a queen rat.
It was the worst. I would rather watch
Mother of Rats, first of its name.
I could watch a million corpses for some reason. You know, probably the most realistic, like cannibalistic, weird shit, and it wouldn't bother me as much as watching this rat thing.
Yeah,
it's just
and having that thing like pop up into his face, and
every hair on my body went bink, straight up. And I'm like, oh Jesus! And I'm in my dark room watching this.
Oh,
I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
It was just like,
I get it.
So speaking of weird and creepy, I want to talk about the great old one that is present in this movie.
Oh,
okay,
we have to talk about him falling into the pit of despair.
Yes. So before we're gonna segue into that.
Get us there.
So he
don't even try to escape.
Don't even try it. We can't help ourselves. I'm sorry. Princess Bride is everywhere. So he's crawling through the tunnel and he falls. He's running away from the giant rat.
Trying to escape the giant rat.
And he falls into this like sinkhole that leads down to the pit of despair.
Like as he's been traveling through these tunnels, sometimes like it gives way underneath him and he has to avoid it. He's trying to run from this rat, so he's not paying attention to what's in front of him, and it gives way and he just falls right into it.
And he falls into this pit and it's all just human bones, human leftovers. And he's looking around.
Stripped down.
But there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, not just that, but like what I love about this character is that he's so greedy.
Yeah.
That even though he's in this dire circumstance, he starts looking around and he sees all the diamond rings and the bracelets and the brooches.
The gold teeth.
And he's like, this is amazing.
Oh my God. He's like,
yeah, he's so excited that he gets to like take this treasure with him. Yeah. And he's so greedy. And this is the part of the episode that really was like, made me want to learn more because he's looking around and there's this creepy ass statue of like this person with 4 arms and bat wings and this crazy octopus looking face with like a freaking vagina face and crazy shit. It looks like a
Venus flytrap.
Yeah, it looks like a Venus flytrap for the eye. And it's like, it's just nuts looking. And then he looks over and he sees the zombie that's like sitting like it's praying.
It's like a mostly skeleton.
Mostly dead person.
Yeah, and it looks like it was just sitting there praying to that statue when it died.
It's interesting because like you touched on a lot of the themes here, which is basically like, you know, Vincenzo loves his themes and part of it is like, you know, how destructive greed can be. And you know, throughout the episode, David Hewlett, his character Mason, you know, he reads the Bible and he has this one passage that he keeps repeating where it's like the way is long and hard and from hell you can climb up to heaven and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And basically like that's kind of his mantra is that you know, he does the difficult things because like he's currently suffering and he wants to stop suffering. And so he feels the ends justify the means. And it's kind of funny because throughout the entire episode, every time he gets in trouble, he's like, God, please, I promise I'll be good.
My God, I will like dedicate my life.
I will dedicate my life.
I repent.
I repent.
Yeah, when I get out. But he never, like, as soon as like he has the opportunity to repent, he doesn't do it. And so like he is greedy, and that's one of the the downfalls that, you know, he goes through. But I want to talk about the Black Church for a minute, which is the thing that he falls into about midway through the episode. And he set this up earlier where he was talking about the Black Church. But this is actually like something that's really interesting because, you know, going back to the Salem Horror, which the author of this short story also wrote, basically there's a kind of Cthulhu deity called Neogotha or Neogotha, or, you know, they have this weird spelling, so I don't know how to pronounce it.
Neagatha.
Yeah.
But keep trying.
But basically in the Salem Horror, the main character rents this house that used to be owned by a witch, and he finds this big stone cathedral like beneath it, just kind of like the Black Church.
Leeches.
And the witch was basically trying to summon this this deity that basically is it's kind of like the god of darkness in the Cthulhu mythos. And basically this is a god that is known to live underground in tunnels. And Vincenzo took this concept from this other story that this author wrote and wove it into this episode in a very interesting way. Because like when David Hewlett's looking around the dark church, you can actually see statues of Cthulhu up in the rafters and stuff like that. And so it's never clear which like Cthulhu god is, you know, the main guy with like the penis flytrap face or something like that.
It's penis flytrap, but I like where your head's at.
well, you guys said it looked like a vagina.
Katie just got something on his mind.
So like the golden amulet that the cultist who was worshiping the deity was wearing was an almost exact replica of the face of the deity. And so there's this idea here that there's more going on in this episode than just like a greedy guy running around looking for treasure. Because when David Hewlett first sees it, one of the interesting things is like we see it reflected in his eye, and it looks like a constellation of stars. And that's something straight from the Cthulhu mythos, is that the great old ones exist on like different planets. And the alignment of stars has like a certain power over humanity.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so like when we see that light reflected in his eyes, it's basically communicating that that he's being put under the spell of the deity that's down there. And one of the interesting things about it is like once he steals the amulet, the previous cultist or witch, we're never clear like, you know, who that is.
Yeah.
He basically
reawakens.
Basically wakes back up and
he's like, mine.
It's like screeching.
Yeah. The whole time.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that, and we're going to talk about this when we get to the end of the episode, is that there's actually like some motivation behind wanting to get that amulet, because it's not just like a piece of gold or jewelry. It actually is the earthly embodiment of that deity. And that's the thing that's basically kind of like causing the rats to do what they do. And I'm going to talk about that when we get to the end of the episode. Okay.
So anyway, you just explained everything that I wanted to know. Go ahead.
Given the pedigree of this with Guillermo and everybody, I half expected a Hellboy thing to come
to drop in here
and rescue him at some point.
Hellboy reference.
Yeah.
I just like,
because it all fits.
When he drops into that Black Church and he's looking around and he sees the statue, and then you see the servant with the gold necklace and all that shit. I was like, I'm over here listening to Katie. She's like, this is exactly what I wanted to know. Like, what does it all mean? Because you know, there's a whole other story being told just in that quick scene.
I'm kind of wondering, since I haven't seen the rest of this anthology, if they fit together at all.
I watched 3 of them, and they're very, very separate.
Very independent.
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, we thought the same thing. We watched this one first, and on first watch, we're both kind of like, well, maybe the other episodes explain it. So we went back and we watched the first episode first, and we were like, nope. And then I think this is kind of like a thing that every time you watch it, you learn a little bit more about it. You get it a little bit more, and it gets better each time. Yeah. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't think I liked that. Yeah. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, I understand it more, and I don't not like it. I get it a little bit more, which makes me like it more.
Yeah. So as he escapes the Black Church, the zombies chasing him, and he's like crawling up the freaking thing, and he's escaping, and he sees this light at the end of the tunnel. He has a quick fight with the mother of all rats, and he drops a boulder on it, which squishes it. And then we get to see David Hewlett just completely covered in goo.
Oh God,
and he's got blood all over him, and he's so happy that he killed the rat, but he shot himself in the toe doing it, which was stupid. So he crawls up this roll and he sees a light at the end of the tunnel, and this is like, I can see the light of day. My God, if I get out of here, I will dedicate my life to you. And he gets up there, and it's actually a reflection off of a mirrored silver piece inside of a coffin that says "Rest in peace" in Latin. It says "Rest in peace," and he starts freaking out. He's like, no. He's inside of a coffin, which is like just. And
that was also his worst nightmare because, like, you know, he envisioned like what his debt collector was going to do with him if he didn't go into that tunnel and get that stuff. Yeah.
So he's stuck inside there. And then at that point, the smaller rats come in and basically devour him. And he's being eaten alive by these rats.
From the
inside of the coffin. And we get the scene where the two grave robbers from the beginning of the episode come back and dig up this grave, open it, and they find the guy.
They're like, hey,
we know that guy.
Which is what we do every time we see David Hewlett.
Exactly. We're like, hey.
and it's funny because at the beginning of the movie, when like he stops them from robbing the grave, and at first you think like, oh, he's like a good guy. He's like, you know, protecting, you know, the grave of this woman.
He gives them a speech about the humanity of burying people. How dare you?
Yeah. And then as soon as they're gone, he hops in the grave. He's like, I'm robbing this one.
Yeah. He opens her mouth and he's like, give me them gold teeth, baby.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then so he ends up being in the cave or in the coffin. And these guys are like about to take all the jewelry because he's got the necklace around him. He's got all this stuff that he carried out from the pit of despair. And they're about to take it. And then rats start freaking crawling out of Hewlett's face and out of his eyeball and all this crazy shit.
You know, it's
nasty.
Listen, it's okay. Everybody knows that we know David.
Right.
Okay. But here's the thing. When you see somebody that you know with rats crawling out of their orifices and shit, it's weird.
It's super curious.
Strange. I want to know. That is like, so if it's 100% CGI or if there's a prosthetic face out there. I want to know.
Or did he have a rat in his mouth?
No. There's no way to do that.
David, did you have a rat in your mouth?
Because he did tell us. He did tell us that he did actually deal with live rats while he was filming this. But I could not tell which ones were live and which ones were CGI.
The CGI is great.
Yeah. I couldn't tell if they were like, there was some scenes where I was like, there's too many rats. That can't be real.
So I wanted to ask you guys, what was your read on the ending? What do you think happened?
He got devoured by the rats.
Yeah, he got taken down to the pit and devoured.
Well, he wasn't. He was still a full body in the coffin. Yeah. Like he looked like he was just lying there. He wasn't eaten at all. So what do you think happened?
We got eaten from the inside out.
They got eaten from the inside out.
Did he though?
Well, yeah, they were crawling. There's a scene as the camera pans away. There's a rat that eats its way through his eye, and his eye pops, and it's like a bunch of blood on his face, and it comes out. I'm like, he's basically like a hollow shell.
I feel like Matt wants to blow our mind.
He only asks us things like that so that he can tell us.
I know.
Please.
I have a theory.
Okay. Give us your theory.
So one of the things about Vincenzo Natali is he always kind of ends his stuff on an ambiguous note, where it's like there's an open-ended question at the end of most of his movies. And so when I was watching this, when I first saw the ending, I was like, that was kind of like a weird ending. You know, like why would the rats like swarm him and crawl inside him and then like crawl back out, like, and stuff like that. And so I've like rewatched this episode multiple times, and I like dug into like, Kuttner's like background and stuff like that. One of the interesting things I found is that in the Salem horror story, Nyarlathotep, I'm just going to pronounce it like that. I know it's probably wrong, but Nyarlathotep, his minions are basically rats. Like he sends rats out to kind of like do his bidding, and he lives underground. So I'm pretty sure that this is the same kind of Cthulhu god from the Salem horror that Vincenzo worked into this episode. And if you look at the black church that Hewlett falls into, it's filled with bones, right? Bones and treasure. And so as I'm watching this, I'm like, why are the rats stealing bodies? It's not that they're eating them, right? Even though like that's on its surface, that's what you think it is. They're taking them down to this black church where there's this amulet that's basically the embodiment of Nyarlathotep. And Nyarlathotep's servants are rats. And so what I'm theorizing is that when bodies are in proximity to that medallion, they spawn more rats. it's not that the rats are eating them. It's that the dead bodies are birthing them as more servants for this evil god. And that's one of the reasons why the infestation at the graveyard's getting so bad, is because the more bodies they steal, the more rats are created, and the more servants that this god is building up to eventually basically, you know, destroy the town. And in the final scene of this movie, you know, they open up the coffin. David Hewlett's character is there, and he's dead, obviously, but he's wearing the amulet.
Yeah.
And when the rats start crawling out from inside of him, it's not that the rats ate him or like whatever. It's that, or burrowed their way inside of him and just hung out there until like the coffin was opened. It's that the amulet, because he's dead, is now gestating new servants within him, and that's the whole reason that the rats are stealing bodies, is to make more rats from the god.
I mean, whatever happens, we know what happens fast, because the military dude who they buried, that had the sword and everything,
happens within like an hour.
Got taken down, and he was completely turned into dry bones.
Yeah.
Because his sword was there was no fresh corpses down.
See, that's the thing. Like I'm not that I'm looking for faults, but I was curious about a couple of things. I'm like, okay, so the first body that we see in the beginning of the episode is still in the coffin. So the rats didn't get to it? Why not?
Yet.
Why didn't the rats go for that one?
I don't know.
It was still there.
Yeah, I wondered about that too, because I was like, she looks pretty decayed. Like,
yeah, she's been there for a while.
Quick enough.
Yeah, I'm like, why are the rats?
Are the rats sexist? They only go after the men.
No, they only go for the rich people.
Yeah.
She was too poor.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's what it was.
That was just pewter.
Yeah, but if you look at as long as the zombie cultist was down there with the medallion on, that's where the rats would take the bodies, because in proximity to the medallion, the bodies would basically turn into a number of rats to serve
that's cool. I mean, I just think it's kind of fun to speculate on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. I did notice that the medallion was actually like around him and not like in his hand, because when he died, he had it in his hand.
Yeah.
He was freaking out. But when they uncovered the coffin, it was like
the zombie came up there and was like, yours.
Yeah. Oh god, that guy was so freaky. Anyway, I had a blast with this episode. It was so fun to watch. I watched it twice, and it was like creepy and crazy. I love watching Hewlett just go bar none, like act the shit out of this show. Amazing.
I kind of wanted him to be more like Ash Williams from Evil Dead. I wanted to be killing all the rats.
This is my boom medallion.
I thought he did great.
Yeah, I think it was perfect the way he played it.
I'm so happy. You know, I don't know if a lot of people know, this is our first as a show. This is our first early access. Our first,
we got a screener.
Yeah,
this is our first screener, and
we're special.
And I'm so happy that it's with a friend of the show.
Yeah,
we got to do this for.
It was really, really cool watching it work.
This is a special thing. This is going to go down in like our history as something that was really cool to do.
Yeah,
and I'm very happy we got to do it.
So,
and it's great.
So, do you guys want to polish up this episode?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. Vader, give us your final thoughts. I don't know if you want to do a rating or not. 'Cause it's not like a movie.
I mean, it's not a movie, but man, this was a good episode of television, man. I mean, it's, what do you say? I had a great time. It creeped me out. It made me, every nerve ending in my body twitch, and for that I appreciate it.
Gave you new phobias.
Yeah, it exacerbated the phobias I already had.
Made me clench my butthole.
It definitely made me clench my butthole.
That's a sign of a great TV show.
Yeah.
How many butthole clenches would you give?
And like I said earlier, there was a couple things that were a little predictable. Like, we knew the zombie dude was going to come to life when he yanked that medallion off it.
Yeah.
But just the way it did it freaked me the shit out. It was just like, ah! It was like
it grabbed his hands.
The jump scares in this. I'm not a big jump scare person, but the jump scares in this were legit. They were good, and there wasn't a ton of them. This is just one of those shows that makes you feel creepy and uncomfortable, and yet kind of like, holy crap!
Yeah.
At the same time. So yeah, good, well done. I'm really looking forward to watching this entire.
I just
when it gets released.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I admire the creative use of the camera angles that Vincenzo uses. Like, there's scenes where like it's almost like he's inside the mouth of a dead person, and you're watching Hewlett like dig out teeth, and
I have
like the super close up angle. There's one angle where I literally got to see up Hewlett's nose, and I was like, oh, that's freaking neat.
I have gained a great appreciation this week for Mr. Natali.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a good filmmaker. So
Jude, final thoughts.
Okay, so I didn't love it as much as you guys did, but like I said before, I feel like this is a thing that I'm going to appreciate more each time I watch it. I really want to finish the whole series. I watched like 3 episodes of it. I want to finish all of them so I can view it like collectively as like a series.
Yeah.
But for me, like I really wanted it to be scarier, and I'm a horror person.
Yes,
so for
you
me,
very much are.
this wasn't scary at all. It was just really weird, and I wanted it to make me more uncomfortable. Like I wanted to feel how
Go
Vader
farther
felt.
than this?
I did.
Oh my God, you're
I
such a
was-
crazy person.
I was expecting it to be like full blown horror, but it was really more psychological. So for me, I was a little disappointed that I didn't get like
You didn't get the
creeped out as much.
You get the gross out
If
thing?
this was more, if this was any scarier, I probably wouldn't like it.
Yeah. Well, my taste isn't for everyone. I'm just saying, like for me, I wanted it to be grosser and creepier and scarier, and I would actually like a whole series just in this because
Sure.
like there's so much more stuff
Oh, yeah.
behind each of these scenes that I would like fleshed out.
the
more.
Black Church is fascinating.
Yeah, I could watch a whole series of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted more, and I didn't get what I wanted.
That's
And-
kind of what the anthology thing is, though.
Yeah,
Maybe
but-
there'll be a season 2.
They're like
So-
appetizers.
So I mean, it did a good job making me want more. But what I got, I was kind of disappointed because I wanted it to be grosser and creepier and scary.
Yeah.
And
Did-
it wasn't that for me.
You and I both watched another episode of this show, which is called The Autopsy.
Autopsy.
Did you like that one?
I did, but I watched that after I watched this, so I kind of had more of go into this like more Hitchcock, not Eli Roth or something.
Okay.
So my perspective had changed a little bit. So I watched The Autopsy, and then I rewatched this episode. So I had a better perspective of what to expect, and I appreciated it more.
Yeah.
And I think if I watched it even more, I'll like it more. It's the thing that you gain appreciation for the more you watch it.
Okay, cool. Kadish, final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like every Vincenzo Natali project is it rewards you upon further viewing. Like the more you watch it, the more stuff you find, because that's just like how layered of a filmmaker Vincenzo Natali is. As a film nerd, like I dove into this episode and I was like, oh, he's doing something with Cthulhu. I wonder what that means. And I like Wikipedia it, and I'm like, oh, this is what it is, And one of the things I just love about Vincenzo Natali is that he really thinks his stories through, and he layers in stuff where it's like, yeah, if you're just watching it, like it's fine. But if you dive into it, it's like super deep and very sophisticated. And so anytime Vincenzo like kind of teams up with Hewlett, I feel like he just makes like magic. And I really hope that, they do something together again real soon. I know Vincenzo is doing a lot of TV nowadays, but like I'd like to see him like do like another like big movie with Hewlett on board, and maybe like some other people from his crew. But I really enjoyed this. Like when upon first viewing, I was like, I wish that had been a little bit better, because I didn't find it scary or anything like that. But upon further viewing, like I must have watched this thing like 3 or 4 times by now. Each time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And like now I think it's brilliant. So it's definitely like, a very typical Vincenzo Natali, where it rewards you the more you dive into it, the more you watch it and stuff like that. But it was also a lot of fun. Hewlett was fantastic in it. I do wish he might have done like a little bit more of an accent, but that's a personal choice. Yeah, like this is just a fun episode, and I would highly recommend that other people watch it and check out like the entire series actually.
Yeah.
And Guillermo Del Toro has been a big kind of like, I want to say champion of Vincenzo for a long time. Like he's produced a lot of like his stuff, and like he believes in him. And so like, it's good to see Guillermo like rewarding people that like he thinks like deserves it. And Vincenzo Natali definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one of those things, like I said before, that Netflix is really good at, is like giving these people a chance to just go and do whatever they want. Like here's a budget to go produce
Just
something
like
cool.
Roger Corman did.
Just go produce something cool and put it out there.
Yeah, it's nice to see them do that and have something good come out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think their anthology series have been a lot of fun so far. Like I cannot wait to finish this. Like I watched this episode, The Autopsy, and I got halfway through another episode that I can't remember the name of, but I'm so excited to dive into this and finish it and watch all the episodes, because it's so fun. Right. And perfect for like an October Halloween horror fall. It fits right in there. It's amazing.
Spooky season.
Yeah, spooky season for sure. All right, guys, that's it for our discussion of The Graveyard Rats. It's a great episode of this show. I highly recommend go checking it out. If you have a Netflix account, it's right there available to you. Jump in. If you don't have a Netflix account, get it for like a free trial or something. Start a new email.
It's definitely worth checking out.
Definitely worth checking out.
The series is called Cabinet of Curiosities. Like Guillermo Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. And this episode was called Graveyard Rats.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to read the short story, it's free online. Just Google The Graveyard Rats. Cool. And it's super short. It was like published in Weird Science magazine or something like that originally. So like takes you like literally like 5 minutes to read. And it's pretty good.
Right on. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching the video. Comment below if you have watched this series yet. What's your favorite episode? And we'd love to hear from you down below. Don't forget, thumbs up for the algorithm. Give us a little boost there. And
leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought.
Yep. Everything. You're crazy. Matt Vader, where can they find you on the socials, bud?
You can find me at MattVader74 on the Twitter and the other socials. And yeah, man, I'm out there.
Perfect.
Talking smack and
Indeed.
And getting smack talked to. So yeah.
All right. And Jude, where can they find you at?
You can find me at I am Jude Juju on the socials, and check out our Facebook group at saltynerdgroup.com.
All right. Matthew Kadish, take it away.
You can find me at Matthew Kadish, Kadish on Twitter and Truth Social. And also, please, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating. We need 200 of those 5-star ratings in order to get officially accredited as movie reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes. And that's our big goal before the end of the year. So if you guys want to help us reach that goal, we'd really appreciate it.
All right, guys. And our great community over there in Discord is itching for new members. So head over to saltynerddiscord.com. It's a fantastic place to hang out. We do watch parties, trivia contests, all kinds of really fun stuff. So join up.
I post drink recipes all the time.
All the time. We're posting pictures that we probably shouldn't post. It's a lot of fun. Head over there on the Discord channel.
We post our workouts and stuff too. We post a lot
We're
on there.
There's
different channels for everyone.
Yeah, for real. If you guys want to hang out with us, Discord is the place to be. We do everything there with our Discord members. And if you're a patron, you get special access. All right, we're out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Stay salty as always, and we'll see you next time.